Hey guys. I said last week I wasn't sure whether or not we were going to be back in Daniel this week, but I read through 2 and I was thinking about it. And I think Daniel 2 is a good follow up to Daniel 1. And we're probably not going to go through all of Daniel because in the second half of Daniel some things get weird. It's a lot of stuff, but this first half of Daniel, I think, really can meet us where we are, and it's pretty easy to understand. Last week we talked all about Daniel being brought into this foreign land with different ideas, and he knew what was right. He was a follower of God, and that was challenged. And people around him were challenging his beliefs, challenging what he knew to be correct. And we saw that Daniel stood up to that. And when he stood up to that, people were scared, they were confused, they didn't understand. They were offering him this good looking stuff that was actually going to produce sickness in Daniel. And it was this physical metaphor, right, of food. Even though it tasted good, it was going to make him unhealthy. And we talked about how we live in a world where we are not understood. Following God, holding closely to the commands that God has given us and that we know are good, is not understood. And just like eating fatty, sugary foods can produce sickness in the body, going after whatever looks pleasant and good and desirable from the world standards that we see in our sinful nature, and we say, ooh, I want that, and we go and we try to take it, can produce sickness in our souls, can produce brokenness and sin. And we see that Daniel, rather than being cast out for standing for something different, not being rude or mean or nasty, but sticking to his guns, following what he knows is right, actually distinguishes himself from everyone else, every other person that was there in the king's court who gave in and just followed what everybody else was doing. Daniel stood out, and he gets the attention of the king, and people start to tell that there's something different about Daniel. And we said that our job as the church is to do that same thing. We are called to stand out and stand apart, and when we don't look like the world, and when people look at you and they say, oh, that's strange, why are you doing that? You're actually doing your job right. You're actually standing apart and standing for something different, standing for something that we were really meant to be, but have forgotten, and not giving in to those momentary pleasures that lead to eventual sickness and death. So here we are in Daniel chapter 2, and we've established, right, that there's this big kingdom Babylon, and little tiny Daniel, and Israel, God's people, has been just stomped on and taken into captivity because of their sin. And Daniel's here, and even though he could say, forget God, he let me be taken into captivity, Daniel is remaining faithful. And we're going to see if it pays off. We're going to see if Daniel's streak of remaining faithful to God continues, and if that's something that we should emulate, or if we should just give in. And it's a long one, so I'm going to be doing a lot of reading, but I think it's a narrative, it's a story. And I think you guys, if you just listen to this, and I'm going to try to convey some of this with my voice and maybe take some drinks of water throughout because my throat's a little... I think you'll get it. I think you'll see what God is doing in Daniel's life in this foreign land that doesn't know God, but is starting to see him through his actions. In the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed such dreams that his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. So the king commanded the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to be summoned and to tell him his dreams. When they came and stood before him, the king said to them, I have had such a dream that my spirit is troubled, and I desire to understand it. And all of his sorcerers said to the king, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will reveal the interpretation. And the king answered them, This is a public decree. If you do not tell me both the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you do tell me the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. And they answered a second time, Let the king first tell his servants the dream, and then we can give interpretation. And the king answered, I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that I have firmly decreed, if you do not tell me the dream, there is but one end for you. You have agreed to speak lying and misleading words to me until things take a turn. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. And the Chaldeans had no answer for the king. There is no one on earth who can reveal what the king demands. In fact, no king, however great and powerful, has ever asked such a thing of any magician, enchanter, or sorcerer. The thing that the king is asking is too difficult, and no one can reveal it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with mortals. So the king calls all these pagan sorcerers, right? These fakey fakes, these full of themselves people of the world who say that they hold all of the secrets to knowledge and happiness and fulfillment, right? These are the guys that say, oh, I've got it. Oh, I've got the new thing. Oh, if you just listen to me, if you just follow me, if you just follow my 5 steps, oh, I'm gonna show you something awesome. These are the fake preachers, the liars, the false religious teachers, and the king calls them in and he says, I want to see that you're legit. And if you're legit, you're going to tell me the dream that I dreamed instead of me telling you. And then once you tell me the dream that I dreamed, you're going to interpret it. And all of them just whine and they can't do it. They do not do it. And they say, no one can do this except the gods above. And nobody can talk with them. Nobody can talk with them. I hope you see where this is going. It's pretty good. This is what happens next. Because of this, the king flew into a violent rage, and he commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. Now remember, last week, Daniel and his friends just started to get included in this group. Just last week, the king just started bringing them in on the council, so this includes Daniel. And they looked for Daniel and his companions to execute them. But Daniel responded with discretion to Arioch, the king's chief executioner, who had gone out to execute the wise men of Babylon. He asked Arioch, the royal official, why is the king's decree so urgent? And Arioch then explained all that had happened to Daniel. So Daniel went in and requested that the king give him time, and he would tell the king the interpretation and his dream. And then Daniel went home and informed his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and they sought mercy from God over heaven concerning the mystery, so that Daniel and his companions with the rest of the wise men of Babylon might not perish. And then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision at night, and Daniel blessed God. And Daniel said, blessed be the name of God from age to age, for wisdom and power are his. Excuse me. There's that drink of water I was telling you about. He changes times and seasons, deposes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to all those with understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things, and he knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. To you, O God of my ancestors, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and power, and have now revealed to me what we are asked of you, for you have revealed to us what the king ordered. So, these fake wise men, people who claim they know it all, the people who talk and talk and talk and talk, but when it comes down to it cannot produce results, are put to shame by Daniel. And the last thing that they say is there is no one on earth with whom the gods, right, plural, dwell. And we see with Daniel, there is a man with whom God speaks. Guess what, guys? You and me, like Daniel, can hear the wisdom of God. Daniel actually says that whoever is wise, whoever is knowledgeable, whatever happens in the earth, God is in control and is over it, and he has reached out to us and requested a relationship with us, requested to give us wisdom, and he is seeking us. So contrary to what the fake wise men say, God is actually reaching out and seeks to give us knowledge. And Daniel goes out and he grabs it. And God responds and gives Daniel the interpretation to the vision, so that the world, these this powerful nation of Babylon, the biggest country in the world at this time, right, in this region, like, for them, this was like the nation, would know that God is in control. And even if you are from a little podunk Israel that gets conquered and everything taken away, and you take everything out of the temple, God is still in control. And Daniel has chosen to follow him. Therefore, Daniel went to Arioch, the king's executioner, and said, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me before the king, and I will give him his interpretation." And then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, "I have found among the exiles of Judah?" What? "I have found among the exiles of Judah a man who can tell the king the interpretation, not among the wise men of Babylon." And the king said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar in Babylonian, "Are you able to tell me the dream that I have seen in its interpretation?" And Daniel answered the king, "No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or diviners can show the king the mystery that the king is asking. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has disclosed to King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen at the end of days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed were these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed came thoughts of what would be hereafter. The revealer of mysteries has disclosed to you what it is to be. But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me because of any wisdom that I have more than anybody else, but in order that the interpretation may be known, and that the king may understand the thoughts of his own mind. You were looking, O king, and all of a sudden there was a great statue. The statue was huge, and its brilliance was extraordinary, and it was standing before you. Its appearance was frightening, and the head of the statue was gold, and its chest and arms were silver, its middle and thighs were of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet of iron and clay. As you looked on, the stone was cut out, not by human hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and broke them to pieces. And the iron and the clay and the bronze and the silver and the gold were all broken and became like the chaff, like the little dusty bits of wheat that get blown away before they make flour. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. I'm going to skip this last part, but you guys can read it if you want. This statue is representative of every great nation like Babylon, of every big thing coming, of all of these nations that take over the world, whether it be Greece or Rome or whatever you want, and they come and they take over and they think they know everything, and they're filled with wise men, and they're filled with philosophies, and they think they are the most powerful thing there is, and they crumble. And Daniel speaks of a rock that will knock them all over and then will fill the entire earth. A rock on which every other thing that wishes to be stable must be founded. And that rock is Jesus. That rock is the church. That rock is God's kingdom. The controller of the world, the giver of wisdom, is building a family, is building a kingdom based on true wisdom and true power and true knowledge. It's called the church. And when we come and we follow God, when we come and we listen to Jesus, we're not going to be fake wise men trying to bluster and fake our way through life. We're going to be people who, not because we're smarter than anybody else, but because we know and listen to the God of all the earth, the God who created everything, the God of all wisdom. We'll be people who will know how to live our lives well. We'll be people who are not seeking homeless, a place to rest, a future that is uncertain. We will know that our God is in control, and we will know that He's caring for us. And we know that the kingdom that we are a part of, God's kingdom, is ultimately going to remain forever and be established finally, when every other failed kingdom is done away with. All right, guys, I'll see you. I hope you're having a good week.